Come on. That's like one of the best guitar riffs of all time. All right, so I'm 53. Most of my friends around my age. I got a buddy of mine who has an 18-year-old son. The guy just doesn't know what he wants to do in life, like a lot of young people. And so he was talking about it, and he's worried about his son. Like, what is he going to do? Is he going to go to college or pick up a trade or whatever? And I go, look, I'm going to tell you something my grandfather did to my dad, and my dad did with me, and I have done with my son. And he goes, what? I go, just wait. Let me know when your son's out of the house. I'm going to come over and we're going to do something cool. He goes, okay. So he calls me, actually texts me. I go over there. His son's gone for about an hour, and I lay out on the bed. I lay out a dollar bill, a Bible, a bottle of Jack Daniels, a copy of Playboy, and a rifle. And my friend looks at me and goes, what you doing? I go, just wait, I'll show you. So we go hide in his son's closet and wait for his son to come back. And it took forever. And finally we hear the car drive up, hear his son walk in the door. The son walks in the room, and he sees all this stuff. My friend goes, what are you doing? And I'm whispering. I go, look, if he picks up the Bible, he's going to be a preacher. If he picks up the rifle, he's going to be a soldier. If he picks up the dollar bill, he's going to be a businessman. If he picks up the Jack Daniels, he's going to be a drunk. And if he picks up the Playboy, he's going to be chasing women his whole life. So his son's looking at all this stuff, and my friend's looking, and I'm looking. And the kid looks, he sticks the dollar bill in his pocket, puts the Bible under his arm, takes a swig of Jack Daniels, puts a rifle on his shoulder, and starts leafing through the Playboy. And my friend goes, what does that mean? And I go, he's going to be an oilman. So I'm home, right? We all think the same way. We all see the value in hydrocarbons. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge every single person in this room to think differently and to act differently. And I guess this is how we change the slides, right? But before I get to that, big shout out to Baker Hughes GE. They made my trip here possible. And what the Baker Hughes people in the room may not know is that Baker Hughes is also the sponsor of one of our newest podcasts, The Permian Perspective, which should be launching by the end of April, beginning of May. So big shout out to Baker Hughes GE for all the good stuff they do in our industry. Got any chemical engineers in the room? Oh, we do, right here. Perfect. So since I figured most of y'all weren't chemical engineers, I actually labeled what this molecule is. It's carbon. Let's talk about carbon. Carbon is stardust. The carbon that makes all of our life possible, and you do know that we're a carbon-based life form, and so is every almond tree out there, and every dog, and every cow, and every goat I saw. We're all carbon-based life forms. That carbon's recycled. The carbon atoms that are in your body could have easily come from dinosaurs, could have easily came from prehistoric fish from the Jurassic era, right? The carbon is immortal. It just gets transformed, it moves. Let's talk about carbon and its usefulness. Carbon by itself is actually not a very useful molecule. It's hard to work with. But you start combining it with other things and it becomes much easier to work with. And one of our favorite things in this room is something called hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons are not fossil fuels. I hate that term, right? Hydrocarbons are the most organic fuel on the planet, the most natural fuel on the planet. It's literally legacy sunlight. For millions of years, plankton and zooplankton in our world's oceans collected this sunlight as energy, stored it as sugar. When they died, their bodies fell to the bottom of the ocean floor in the perfect conditions of zero oxygen condition, right? So it didn't rot, and it got covered by layers of sediment. And then Mother Earth heated and compressed this for millions of years, and then it gives it back to us. It's organic. It's totally natural. It is the most important molecule to mankind. Everything we do involves hydrocarbons, right? And I want to challenge the room to quit thinking about hydrocarbons solely as fuel, because it's not, right? It's the basis, carbon is the basis of all life. Hydrocarbons are the most useful molecule made from carbon. It's something that drives prosperity, abundance all over the world. And speaking of prosperity and abundance, I want to talk a little bit about our industry in carbon. And pardon me, folks, I'm getting antsy. I'm used to walking on the stage. The stage, I'll fall if I try to walk here, so I'm not going to do that. But I want you to think a little bit about our industry as a whole. Hydrocarbons are very useful. We all know that. Hydrocarbons are the basis of trade globally. It's one of the few global commodities. Anybody ever wonder why WTI can go for $57 a barrel right here, and it's exactly $57 a barrel in Tokyo, and exactly $57 a barrel in Rio? Anybody want to guess? It's the only thing that's traded, where we have the global infrastructure built, will it cost us almost nothing to move from here to Tokyo or from here to Europe, right? At any one time, there's more weight in hydrocarbons in the ocean than all the weight of the fish combined. That's how big this is, right? You don't ever hear this. What you do hear is negative. And the negativity is our own fault as an industry. I was the first one to raise my hand. I will own this problem. For the last 70 years, anytime somebody says something negative about our industry in public, we don't correct it. I'm not talking politics, I'm not talking opinion, I'm talking about facts. And as an industry, we're really bad at talking about this in a way. How many of y'all have ever heard of a Russian or Chinese oil spill? That means one of two things. They're either better at it than us and the Europeans, or they don't tell. You want to guess which one it is? You know what happens when we have a spill? We clean it up, we fix it. This is an industry of engineers. I'm telling you, we can fix anything in this industry. And so we take environmental responsibility to our hearts. So one of our shows is the Oil and Gas HS&E show. Everybody in this room knows HS&E is the most vital metric in our industry, period, bar none. But what a lot of people don't know outside of our industry is, yes, it's a metric that we use internally that we get judged by. Yes, it's a KPI, but trust me, folks, I've interviewed hundreds of senior leaders in this industry, and in their hearts, everybody wants their people to go home safe every day. It's not a metric, it's the way we feel about our people, about our family, right? So when you think about hydrocarbons and you think about big companies and you think about the challenges we're facing, we need to own that we've done a horrible job communicating the value to the public. And then in the last decade or so, with the advent of social media, now one person has the eyes and ears of millions of people, right? We need to use those same tactics. So I'm on the board of directors of the API Houston chapter. All of y'all know who the API is. We call it Big API Washington. I've had some serious issues with how they spend their marketing money, right? I'm watching small companies like, and excuse me when I say small companies like Anadarko, but I'm watching small companies like Anadarko, Noble Energy, Oxy, finally figure out that the way to spread the truth about the great stuff about our industry is not with full-page ads in the Wall Street Journal. It's not with press releases. It's by empowering their people, you, to go out and talk about what we're doing. Now the problem is, our industry is risk adverse. Have you ever thought about that? Anybody outside of our industry thinks we're old fashioned. We're not. Has anybody ever seen a subsea tree being built? It makes the NASA scientists like a bunch of Lego builders. It's an incredible amount of engineering and construction. We're unbelievably huge on new technologies, new processes. But in our industry, if we make a mistake, people die. And not only do people die, but you can have an environmental catastrophe which can destroy a company overnight. So in our industry, and we have a process or a technology in place, and whether it's how you cement a well, how you do accounts receivable, or your HR process for hiring a new employee, and if nothing leaks and nothing blows up, nobody wants to change that process, right? That's why you see legacy systems. That's why you see we've never done that before. That's why I see all the time multi-billion-dollar projects, CapEx projects, being run on a 72-tab Excel spreadsheet. Folks, Excel is not made for that, right? But we've always used that. As an industry, we have to back away from that thought process, right? And when we're looking at how we promote our industry to the rest of the world, we need to get away from big corporations. And big corporations, if you're leadership in a corporation, and you only allow the official press release person or the analyst relations people to only do press releases, and that's the only one that can tweet on your social accounts, only can push on Facebook, you gotta stop that. You gotta empower your people to be able to tell the story of our industry. That's the only way we're gonna be able to pull out of this slump. So, try to change the slide, it won't work. There it is. Let's talk a little bit about the people. How many of y'all know that right now in the US, the oil and gas industry is the second youngest demographic? We went from a bunch of old guys like me through the downturn to a bunch of young, sharp people. This is our future. And if for some reason you don't see this as our future, I'm sorry, it's coming at you like a freight train. It's not gonna stop. How many people know that for every barrel you produce, you help elevate the economic position of 13 people in developing countries? For every barrel. It's amazing the stuff that we do. You know, 85% of everything in hospital emergency rooms is made from hydrocarbons? We don't tell that story. You know who spends more money fighting AIDS than any government agency or non-government agency in the world? They're right here in this room with us. It's Chevron. You know who does the same thing with malaria, who fights malaria all over the world and never talks about it? It's ExxonMobil. As leaders, because they're not being told, people form their opinions on the squeakiest wheel. And with the advent of social media, that squeaky wheel quite often is somebody that either doesn't know our industry or doesn't like our industry. And we spoke politics up here. I challenge our politicians, learn our industry. If you don't like my industry, tell me why. But tell me why based upon facts. Don't tell me why based upon theory or something that you heard. How many people are old enough to remember acid rain? You do realize it's gone. We fixed it. The oil and gas industry fixed it, right? You want to guess if we had a magic wand, if we removed every automobile today out of the US, you want to guess how much our total emissions would drop percentage-wise? Less than 2%. Our cars burn so clean now. I have a 2013 Infiniti. At 80 miles an hour, it puts out 80% less emissions than my 1967 Mustang does cut off in the garage. Right? We don't talk about this, right? If you're a politician and you're for our industry, learn the challenges. Don't just say you support oil and gas. Learn what we're dealing with. Let me tell you what the biggest challenge that's coming at us that we're facing for the first time ever. Young people don't want to come work in our industry. Now, remember I said earlier that we're an industry of engineers and project managers. We're good at that. No matter what you do, it's project management engineering. Some of the best engineering minds on the planet work in this industry. What happens, people, when we can't hire engineers? For my entire lifetime, maybe not here, but the rest of the world, let's pick Africa. Some young person, some young woman in Nigeria, if she got a job with Chevron, the village would rejoice. It would be celebration time because this is jobs, this is money, this is medical care, this is prosperity for her and her family, her extended family, right? For the first time in our history as an industry, that young man or woman in Nigeria doesn't want to come work in our industry. We need to own that. We need to fix that. Now, I'll tell you something else. The world has a bunch of emerging economies. So by 2050, 2/3 of our planet will live in metropolitan areas. Right now in China and in India and in Vietnam, pick your emerging economy, it's an agrarian lifestyle. It's typically a large extended family, so mom and dad have a bunch of kids, they live with grandma and grandpa. That's my workforce. I farm to feed my family, and hopefully I have a little bit extra I can sell to buy stuff, right? That generation is getting ready to move into a city. Right now, they don't need Tupperware. They don't need Mark's Lots. They don't need duct tape. This next generation will, because they'll be in a city. All of that is made from hydrocarbons. All of that. We don't tell the story, and we need to start telling the story. The only way we will pull these emerging economies out of poverty, out of an agrarian lifestyle, and bring them up to modern standards is with what we've talked about here, cheap, reliable, abundant energy. One of the things I have a little bit of an issue with some people in my industry is they're anti-renewable. No, don't do that. That's what starts the divide. That's what starts the me versus you. Love your neighbors. I love renewables. It has their place. If you think about mankind, we've always had a mix in our energy use. We start off, everybody, with biofuels. We start off burning wood. Do you want to know how much pollution that creates? And then we move to coal, right? And between coal and crude oil and natural gas, we hunted whales, right? To the point of extinction. You know who saved the whales? Y'all. It wasn't environmental groups. You brought a product to market which was cheaper and more reliable and better than whale oil to make light with. Y'all saved the whales. We don't talk about that. We talk about environment. My degree's in wildlife management, right? One of my favorite things to do is have a discussion with somebody who doesn't like our industry and talk about our impact to wildlife. Because I'm telling you, I can give you the numbers, I can prove it, and I can back it up. The Gulf Coast of the US, we have the Rigs to Reef program. Before the Rigs to Reef program started, because we didn't have a lot of coral, because the water's very dirty, not dirty as in polluted, but there's a bunch of silt coming out from Mississippi, so there's not enough light so corals can't grow. A lot of the Gulf was like a desert. There was no structure for wildlife. You start throwing these rigs, and corals start attaching themselves, sponges start, and so all of a sudden you build this ecosystem, and it's beautiful. We don't talk about it, and we need to talk about it more. So we have all these worlds of young people. The thing that bothers me the most, so you have the millennial generation, and my core team is all millennials. I think this is one of the greatest generations on the planet because they act and think differently. But because they act and think differently, my generation has a hard time talking to them, right? You don't want to talk politics. You don't want to talk your opinion. What you want to do is challenge them. One of my favorite things in the world to do is go, do you think you could go a day without hydrocarbons? And every single one of them says yes. And the very first thing I say is, give me your cell phone. All of a sudden it's impacted them. They go, my cell phone's made from hydrocarbons? Or, yeah, it's ethylene crackers, right? They convert natural gas to plastics. So is your shoes, your shirt, your pants. You need to give me all of that, right? All of a sudden they like hydrocarbons a little bit better, right? Because I've now made it personal. I've made it part of their life, not my life, not the API's life, not big oil's life, their life. We talked today about the problems California is facing. When people's electricity bills start going up and they can't afford electricity, and if you don't think that's gonna happen, take a look at what happened in Germany the last couple of years, right? So Germany had the Interwind program. Their hearts were in the right place. And let me back up a little bit. The people that don't like our industry, the large majority of them, their hearts really are in the right place. They think they're doing something good. It's just they've been misinformed. Unfortunately, there's a much, much smaller group that intentionally misinforms them for their own financial gain, right? And so, as an industry, as people that want to help other people prosper, we need to tell this story. We need to quit passing legislation that allows companies to benefit from hurting our industry. It's ridiculous. But the way to stop that is we need to vote. We have very low voter turnout in this country. It's kind of embarrassing. I've worked all over the U.S., 4 years of Marine Corps, Semper Fi, for any brothers out there. I think one of the things that, as a country, we don't do a good job of is most people in the U.S., because we're so prosperous, because of the cheap energy we have, we don't have to leave our country. And so most of the people in the U.S. don't see how the rest of the world lives. We have it really good here, people. Our poor people are overweight and have cell phones. That's not normal. We're so prosperous that our poor people have cell phones and are fat, right? I hate to say it, but y'all are responsible for that too. So, personally, get involved in schools, get involved in universities. If you work for a company, bug the bejeebies out of who's ever in charge of restricting the firewalls to let you tweet when you're at work. Yes, I know it's a risk. Yes, somebody may say something that you don't want them to say. Tough. The tech industry's done it. Right? The medical industry's done it. We need to do it too. We need to start telling a story in a way that this new younger generation actually listens to. The other thing that scares me, besides this lack of talent, is perception. So the Generation Z, that's the generation right behind the millennials. It's the ones that are in high school-ish right now. Less than 2% of them have a positive perception of our industry. Less than 2%? We don't need to own it. That's our fault as an industry. We're not out there telling the stories. So I'm from Texas, from Houston actually, and my local school district, my son brought home a textbook and they actually talked about the end of oil. They talked about peak oil. And I spent 2 years fighting and lobbying for this. And peak oil, if you don't know the story, very sharp guy from Shell named Hubbard figured out mathematically that we were going to hit the peak of production and then go down, but it was based upon the data he had in the late 50s and early 60s. He was wrong. He is so wrong. We will run out of hydrocarbons about the same time the sun runs out of hydrogen. Y'all know that? Do you know that these fields here, even the best operator is maybe getting 15% of the hydrocarbons off the ground, right? At least 75% of the hydrocarbons. Every day there's a new well stimulation technique, there's a new biological, there's a renewed interest in this. Something I find fascinating, speaking of prosperity and technology and oil, Google, Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, big tech companies, all publicly do not support our industry. In fact, they don't like our industry. Can I tell you that Google Oil exists? That's a dedicated budget for a bunch of Google guys to be in Houston, Texas to try to help us with our data problems. So even though Google publicly says they don't like our industry, they're making money off of us. There's opportunity there. Same thing with Amazon Web Services, same thing with Salesforce. They're all right in our backyard working with our industry. So if the tech giants see the potential, even though they won't admit it, right, but their actions speak louder in the world, we need to see our own potential. Yes, we use less oil and gas for fuel every year here in Europe, but the rest of the world doesn't. The rest of the world needs those energy, but we use more and more of it to make stuff. I threw this number out yesterday, I believe, on the radio show, but 72% of a Tesla is made from hydrocarbons. I love renewables. They're a market for us. The blades in that windmill are made from hydrocarbons. They're composites. The insulation on the wires, hydrocarbons. The paint on the stand, hydrocarbons. The lube in the gearbox, hydrocarbons. The vinyl in the Tesla, the tires on the Tesla, on and on and on and on. Hydrocarbons. We need to tell a story of how hydrocarbons are the best thing that's ever happened to mankind, and our ability to manipulate those molecules are our future. And let me see where I am with time, because I could do this forever. All right. So, speaking of our future, does this look like the oil company of the future? Does that look insane that I put a picture of a spaceship out there? You want to guess what is the only fuel that has enough energy density to get us all out of our gravity well, get us off our planet? There's only one. Come on, I keep saying hydrocarbons. Y'all know that's the answer, hydrocarbons. Elon Musk, genius in several ways. I think he's a genius to get in public perception, to give him subsidies to fund his company. Still, genius. And by the way, I'm not dogging Tesla. Has anybody driven a Tesla? It is an incredible automobile that just happens to be electric. That is our future. There's a lot of efficiencies by going electric once somebody figures out this storage thing, once we have better batteries. Only one fuel can get us off the planet. So Tesla's SpaceX program runs a very sophisticated fuel called RP1, Rocket Propellant 1. You wanna know what it really is? It's kerosene. Kerosene liquid oxygen, right? Hydrocarbons. If you think the future of mankind is somehow dependent on our ability to explore space, do you want to know the only molecule that we can mold and change chemically to make spacesuits? Hydrocarbons. If you think we'll ever leave our solar system, we have to have a way to refuel our ships. There's this little planet called Saturn, and around it there's a little moon called Titan. And Titan has lakes of liquid methane. Titan is covered with lakes of liquid natural gas. How better way to refuel a spaceship? Right? We stop halfway out our solar system, drop a pipe, cut the pump on, there's probably a bunch of pumpers out there. But we'll be able to explore the universe because of hydrocarbons. This is our future, right? And if we can't tell the story effectively to our world's young people in a way that they understand and they resonate with, we're gonna be in trouble. Now, do I think it's all doom and gloom, even here in California? No. Human personality is human personality. When the emotional cost of change gets higher than the pain of changing, things change. I promise you, I saw this happen in Germany, I promise you as people's electricity bills get to the point where they can't afford to pay them anymore, people will want to change stuff. Big agricultural center of the US right here, right? How many people know that 70% of the world is fed with fertilizer made from hydrocarbons, right? Natural gas. We got these really cool chemical engineers that work in the industry that can do things with molecules that is just sexy, right? They can crack that natural gas and turn it to all kinds of stuff, including ammonia, which is where the fertilizer gets its ammonia from. Somewhere in the future, as our technology evolves, as our population grows, as we start exploring other planets besides our own, we're gonna need a fuel that's a little bit better than gasoline, right? Hydrogen. Do you want to know where we get the hydrogen from? Come on, it's a theme. I keep saying hydrocarbons. Huh? Right? So we're right now, if you think about the cost per kilowatt of electricity based upon a gallon of gasoline, we're at the point now where we can crack natural gas and get pure hydrogen almost for the same price. Once that price gets lower, that's going to cause an initiative, because people can make money off of it, to start building the infrastructure, right? To start having hydrogen-powered vehicles. I get this pushback a lot. Well, hydrogen's explosive. Duh. So is gasoline, right? We just learned how to work with it safely. We've built the infrastructure. That infrastructure will gradually change. Hydrocarbons are our future, and there's nothing you can do to keep that from happening. Unfortunately, if we don't do a better job of telling our story, it's going to slow a lot of this progress down. I have this thing I do every year. I do the predictions for industry for next year. So this past November, I did the predictions for this year. I've done it for about 5 years, and I'll do it in the future. And two things about that cracks me up. One thing is the big analyst firms call me and they go, "Where are your predictions?" And I go, "Dude, you're the analyst. I'm just some guy, works in the oil field, and I just take these best guesses based on all the work that we've done." But the other thing that cracks me up is people think our industry is going to die. They think we're going to fade away, that we're archaic. We're the opposite of that. We're the leader in new technology, in energy production, food production, jobs, and it's only going to grow. But it only can grow if we can get over this little bump that we're in, which is this trough of negative public perception. Now, based upon our research, we actually think that, now this is a US and European study, not California, not just US, but US and European. We think we hit the negative trough of public perception last year. I think it's gonna take about 15 years for us to climb completely out of it. But in my head, the future of our industry is beautiful. I think in 25 or 30 years, the oil and gas industry is gonna look like Silicon Valley. We have a bunch of, this perfect storm coming in. We have this new younger workforce, which is gonna happen no matter what. They think and act differently. This new younger workforce isn't like me. So my generation would go work for a big oil company, and maybe I don't like my job, but tough. I'd do it for 30 years, and then I would enjoy life after, right? I'd retire. And then the story about that is usually the wife hasn't had her husband home in 30 years. When he retires, she's sick of him being home, so he goes find another job to get out of the house. But this new younger workforce isn't gonna do that. They're gonna come work for me, and no matter how well I pay them, and how well I train them, how well I treat them, and how well I give them visual progress to their career path, they're gonna leave because they want new experiences. As an industry, we're gonna have to learn how to deal with that. And one of the things that we're gonna learn to deal with is we're gonna have a flexible workforce. You know, anybody out there that does anything in upstream knows that there's such a huge need for standardization. Literally every mud pump is different, every manifold is different, every blowout fender is different, every drilling rig is different. And what we started as an industry is to start standardizing that. Well, once we standardize the stuff that we have to work with, now that engineer doesn't have to know how Chevron configures its trees. The trees are all the same. So that engineer now can do work for Chevron, do work for Anadarko, do work for Exxon. And we're gonna have to do that because we don't have enough people coming in our industry. And then technology. I was able to pull off an offshore rig tour about 2 years ago, which I can't believe I pulled that off. I'll never do it again. For our young professionals group in the API. And I have been offshore in 15 years. It is amazing the technology changes that have happened in offshore. The drilling rig floor is small because there's no people there wrapping chains and tongs. You no longer measure the tenure of a roughneck by how many fingers he's missing, right? That's incredible. Last year, it was safer to work in oil and gas than it was to work in real estate. That's how far we've moved the needle. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with real estate, dude. I don't know, yeah. But we need to talk about that. We need to talk about, as an industry, not only do we pay taxes, of course we pay taxes, right? We do stuff for the betterment of mankind out of the kindness of our hearts. How many companies out there do you know build schools, staff schools, build roads, hospitals, right? Bring in technical expertise. I'm involved in this all the time. You know, we give away scholarships all the time, right? And we do it because it's what we want to do. It's the right thing to do for the planet, for the people, for humanity. And it's what oil and gas does. We take care of everybody. But I'm telling you people, we have to do a better job of communicating what's going on with our world's young people. There's some initiatives out there that we've taken part in that's helped. One of the things that happens to us, which by the way, somebody mentioned podcasts. I would love to tell you I'm a genius. When my marketing guy first brought me the idea of a podcast 5 years ago, I told him it was a stupid idea, I don't want to do it. And now it's our fastest growing revenue stream. We have the top 6 in the world in oil and gas. We're over 700,000 listeners from 172 different countries. And most of our listeners are young. And I get this anywhere between 10 and 50 times a day. I get young people from around the world reach out to me. They go, Mr. Lacour, I heard you say that my tennis shoes wouldn't exist without hydrocarbons. And I call bullshit, right? So I went and did the research to prove you wrong. And oh my God, do you realize it's not just my shoes, but the buttons on my shirt and the medicine in the hospital and the syringes need to give my dog shots. And so because they want to challenge me, they do their own research and they find the facts themselves. And it changes their opinion, one young person at a time. I'm telling you, if I can do this, y'all can do this. It's just a matter of talking to people. It's a matter of letting companies open up, get away from worried about risk of what people say in public, and let your employees talk to their neighbors. Let them talk to the school boards. We can make a difference, and we are making a difference. The thing I worry about California is, I'll kind of zig, y'all should zag, right? So, California historically has always been a much bigger producer in Texas. Not anymore, right? We're chasing it down, we're gonna pass you up, we're gonna pass everybody up. But you can do it. You can come back and be that leader. But you gotta tell the story of our industry the right way. And I don't wanna get into politics, but it's hard not to in our industry. if we can't get the right elected officials to understand what we do, whether they support us or not, but just have an understanding of what we do, our ability to communicate that message to young people on a mass scale is going to be dampened, and that's going to slow us down. So here in California, I think one of the challenges we all have as an industry, as people that live here and work here, is making sure our voices are heard in a way that is not argumentative, that is not based upon opinion, and really doesn't really touch politics. But we have to tell the stories to our politicians. I just told I got to shut up. So, with that said, everybody pull your phone out, take a picture real quick. If you're interested in the podcast, if you have an iPhone, you put that Q code in your camera, and it will automatically pull up a podcast. If not, if you're Android, if Android, you have to actually type in oggn.com. And then if I can help you with anything, there's my Twitter handle. Just reach out to me. I would love to help, especially if y'all want to help educate our nation's young people. It's a passion of mine. Thank you very much.